Hey there, and welcome to another one of my little diary entries about my kind of life and different stages. So in this video here, I'm going to talk about my experience with KFC. So my first job when I was in year 8, so 14 and 9 months was the legal age to start working. I took a job at KFC as a cook. And so I started as a cook, and very quickly I then got cross-trained and was then starting to do front of house and serving and drive-through. And then I became a manager. And a lot of the things that I do today in my life and business, I really do think it's got to do with the systems and the process that, KFC kind of gives you when you're young. Like I really do. I've been a bit biased sometimes if I see people's resumes that they've worked at KFC. Not only does that build instant rapport, but I know how their brain thinks. KFC and like with a lot of franchises, even though like those jobs are kind of looked at as like a bit basic, I feel like I learned more at KFC than what I did sometimes at university and in many different business coaching and mentoring sessions. Being 14, 15, 16, still going to school, and then having, 15, 16-year-olds come to work, serve, and back then it was probably a little bit different than what it is today. But a lot of the people that I worked with, we really did care a lot about meeting targets, KPI. KFC uses a balanced scorecard kind of system. I don't know what they do now, but back then that's what they did. And it was really transparent. Like as a 15-year-old, I could go in the shift and I could see what our sales were last night. You could see what all the sales were for all the other stores in the area. We would have friendly competitions with speed of service. But one of the things that they really have that has stayed with me is they've got frameworks, systems, and procedures. Like everything was documented. There was a procedure for every single corner, nook and cranny of a KFC. Like there was not one thing that you would do in any franchise that didn't have a system and a process. And like, I remember that you would put the chicken in the water and you would shake the basket 7 times. You would shake it 7 times to drip the water, and you'd put it in the flour and you would fold it 10 times and then you would press 7 times. It was like the 7-10-7 process. The drums got double dipped, and like there was just a process and everything had been thought about to make sure that there was consistency and excellence across all their different stores. And those little systems and having like flow charts and procedure guides of like step 1, you do this, step 2, you do that, was really foundational for the way that my brain kind of ticks and thinks. And I really do feel like I can go into companies these days and look at their systems and look at their procedures and see how they can be optimized. And when I worked myself up to a shift supervisor, I didn't go any further than that. I didn't want to be a store manager. And the reason for that, or even an assistant manager, is that once you became an assistant or store manager, you got locked at the store that you were at, like you got a home store. And I really liked being a shift supervisor because I could go from one store to another and kind of float around. And that gave me the ability to kind of like cross-pollinate. I would go to one store and go, oh, it's really interesting how, they do this station really effective, but maybe they've got issues over here of their speed of service for drive-through. And so I was able to kind of like share tips and tricks between all the different stores. And so I kind of at the age of like 18, because you need to be 18, you need to have your license before you're a shift supervisor in the event of an emergency. 18, 19, I was like asked to go from one store to another and kind of like improve them or fix them. It's kind of like, it was the early days of where I realized that I kind of had this energy that people would be like, oh, there's a problem there, send Ray, he'll fix it. And that's happened in all my work life. People want to give me the problems to solve. That's why on my website I say I'm like a professional problem solver, because I've just had the ability to walk into a room and just observe and then kind of go, well, what about if we try this? And people go, how did you think of that? Like, you've only been here for 3 days, a week or whatever. But having those fresh set of eyes, looking at something that people do over and over, Like my brain is wired for like what people would call a shortcut, but I kind of call them smart cuts. I'm always looking for optimization points. I'm always looking to like not double handle something. And some of the improvements that I would make would be like, well, why walk 10 steps to get this particular item? Like, why not stock it here where then like you just turn around and get it? And for some reason, people would just blow their mind and be like, wow, that's so smart. And I'm like, but doesn't everyone want to solve this problem? But I think one of the things that happens at KFC is, and even maybe in other workplaces, is that people think that someone else has solved the problem and that you don't really have a say. And I never really kind of bought into that idea. Like I would always, and I still do, kind of question the system and like go, yeah, but wouldn't it be better if we just skip that? And often people be like, Ray, just follow the process. And I'm like, yeah, but the process is broken. And while you might think that KFC is a bit rigid, I felt like I was always heard. And I remember even like kind of rebuilding a rostering software in Excel because I was at uni at the same time and I was learning coding, and I built this rostering system in Excel, and the area manager loved it and rolled it out to the area. And I was like, wow, I can actually make a difference in something that is like franchisable. And you would think that those things have been solved, shut the door, don't think about it. People only in head office gets to make those changes. But it's where I really realized that it's the field on the ground, or it's the force on the ground that really requires the feedback loop to send the message to area managers, to market managers, to head office to say this isn't working in a store. And so I really feel like KFC was a great foundation for me to kind of get a process and learn that and see what systems and all that are about, question them and go, are there opportunities to change, modify, optimize, and even with like technology changing and things like that. We were always rolling out new register systems, new drive-through technology, all those kind of things. And just not kind of getting stuck to going, oh, well, it's not my job. Someone else has already thought of that. And so I really feel like KFC and all those franchises are a really good training ground for your mind and how to think and how those kind of like cogs all work together. And a lot of the principles of like, one of the values at KFC was like how we work together. And you would go to like KFC conferences and training sessions, and I did like first aid courses, and I did all these extra curriculum things. You would do these kind of competitions with other stores where you would like compete on how accurately you could follow the procedure and like not make a mistake by like cross-contaminating, and like and just thinking about that, like even to the level of like, pink chuckses were for raw, green chuckses were for cooked, blue chuckses were for glass. And so like everything had a color, everything had a reason. You didn't have to think too hard. You pick up the pink one and go, oh, this is for raw chicken. It shouldn't be here. This station's been cross-contaminated and needs to be sanitized. And there would be a process for that. And so it really trained my brain. And I didn't really realize this at the time. And years after, I was always able, like people would always be like, how did you pick these systems up so quickly? How do you know how to optimize that path of least resistance? And I really do attribute it to one, maybe the way my brain is wired. And years on, I've kind of maybe realized that maybe I'm undiagnosed dyslexia, and dyslexic people tend to have really good pattern recognitions. And that's always been kind of like my strong suit. And so I can look at patterns and go, oh, something's not working here. And using like my observation brain to just kind of see how something's done over and over and over. And where people would be like frustrated that something was annoying, I would be like, why don't you just move this? People are like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And so, I don't know, like I think KFC played a really big part of my brain development, the ability for me to like solve problems, follow procedures, question the procedures, don't always kind of take it on face value. And this would happen all the time where someone from head office who didn't spend a lot of time in a store would send a procedure kind of down the system, and it would get to the store level and would be like, really, this makes no sense. Like, has this person come into the store and seen what we're going through on a nightly basis and with a line out the door? Like, this might seem smart, but it's not practical. And, maybe we need to tweak this and tweak that. And I just really found my voice, that I was able to kind of like take the procedure and process and system that would be kind of fixed and rigid and question it and think, can I have a say? Can I put my opinion? Could I reify it a bit, And so that really gave me my kind of voice to kind of question the system. Not everything's, based on face value. But hands down, I would always hire someone a bit biased that has like worked in the KFC franchise, because I just know how their brain ticks. Not that I'm all about building big teams these days. I think, the smaller business enterprises is really what's going to be the way of the future, especially with AI and stuff like that. But yeah, I just, wanted to share my next chapter, which was at KFC. And I was looking at my little timeline before, and I actually started KFC when I was still in year 8. So if you watch the previous video about like me selling CDs and mixtapes and downloading kind of people's, wish lists and downloading them off the internet, that was like 1998. And then like 1999, I started at KFC. So this is before the 2YK bug, if you're that old to remember what that is. But before the year 2000, I was in the franchise world. I was on the internet. I really do believe that I was kind of like one of the first people in Australia, the first group or the early adopters to get on the internet. And so my next video, I'm going to talk about the way that I then kind of went through uni, got frustrated with how annoyingly bad and outdated it was as this world of the internet was kind of opening up. And I was like, everything's solvable by a search. Back then there was no Google. I remember like there was like, I don't know, there was this, anyway, I'm not going to geek out about the internet, but Google didn't even exist back then. And so, and I've actually got just a little hook for you to watch the next video. I've actually got this old internet directory, which you buy from the newsagent, and you'd have to type in these really long web addresses. So in my next video, I'll get that out and show you this, like the way that you discovered internet pages and websites before search engines were a thing. And that's actually dated 1998. So that's how early I kind of was on the internet and was kind of seeing these worlds of like systems, franchises, KFC, schooling, education, going to uni, not really kind of seeing that like I was learning stuff that was outdated. And then this, world of the internet where like all the information I needed was at my fingertips, and I could create stuff like websites and mobile pages back then. And I got my kind of like Nokia 5110 in like year 8 or year 9 as well, playing Snake and downloading custom ringtones. But anyway, I digress. But that's a little bit of a snapshot of like how powerful I think KFC and franchise models are for the developing brain. And I think, I know that I learned a lot of my principles and like how to work together in a team, how to get young mindset people motivated, how to like, communicate with people during shift changeovers and like for the next shift, and, counting money, handling money, profit and loss, scorecards, and all the metrics that kind of make businesses work, like I remember like ringing up the next morning, because I always kind of act as like the owner. But I'd always ring up the next day and be like, what was our SPH and what was our, dollar per hour, and like, how do we balance like the staff wages to the money that we're making? And this was my 15, 16, 17-year-old brain kind of being immersed in this. And I did KFC for about 7 years. So it was a very big kind of chapter in my life. I took a little break in the middle just to focus on other things. But like, it was kind of interesting how I really do attribute a lot of my business mindset, systems, procedures to the days that I was at KFC. So hopefully this video has made you hungry for some finger licking fun. Even though I work there, I'm never sick of it. KFC, well, lately it's been dropping the ball a little bit, but KFC's definitely like always had my heart. Whenever I travel the world, like I always seek out the KFC and like try the local menu, but I never got sick of eating KFC. I don't know why, maybe because I also knew how it was all kind of made, and that, so it just, I don't know, I just always have a heart for KFC, but they are dropping the ball on their chips and some other things lately, and so I've had some bad experiences. But this is not a rant video. So that's it for this little chunk of video. Hopefully you're enjoying this series if you are following along, but if not, I'm kind of doing these just for my own journaling and my kind of brain dump of all the different chapters that have been part of my life, and to kind of work on my personal brand. So don't subscribe, don't follow, but if you want to, go ahead, I can't stop you. This is the internet after all. You can do what you want. All right, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.